It was a chilly autumn evening in the small, forgotten town of Blackwood. The year was 1923, and I, William Grayson, had just returned to my ancestral home, a decrepit manor that had been in my family for generations. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, as if the very walls of the mansion whispered ancient secrets to anyone who dared to listen. As I stepped through the creaking front door, I was greeted by the unmistakable scent of old wood and dust. The place had been abandoned for years, but for reasons I couldn't quite explain, I felt drawn back to it. The fading daylight cast eerie shadows across the grand foyer, and I shivered, pulling my coat tighter around me. The echoes of footsteps on the hardwood floors reverberated through the empty house as I ventured further inside. Dust motes danced in the dim light, creating an otherworldly atmosphere. The whispers I had heard about this place haunted my thoughts, and I couldn't help but wonder if there was any truth to the tales of supernatural occurrences that had plagued my family for generations. I decided to explore the mansion, my footsteps echoing through the empty hallways. As I ascended the grand staircase, I felt a chill run down my spine. The portraits of my ancestors lined the walls, their eyes following me with an eerie intensity. Each generation seemed to have grown paler and more ghostly, their faces etched with a sense of unease. My curiosity led me to a locked door at the end of a dimly lit corridor. The key had been passed down through the generations, and I knew it was meant for me. With trembling hands, I inserted the key into the rusty lock and turned it. The door creaked open, revealing a room bathed in darkness. I fumbled for a candle and a match, finally igniting a feeble flame that barely pushed back the shadows. The room was filled with ancient books and arcane symbols scrawled on the walls. A shiver ran down my spine as I realized the significance of what I had uncovered, a hidden study that held the secrets of my family's dark past. As I pored over the manuscripts, I began to hear faint whispers coming from the shadows. They were indistinct at first, like the distant murmur of a crowd, but they grew louder and more insistent. It was as though the very walls of the room were trying to communicate with me. The whispers spoke of a curse that had plagued my family for centuries, a curse born of dark rituals and forbidden knowledge. It spoke of a malevolent presence that lurked in the shadows, feeding on the souls of my ancestors and promising unimaginable power in return. It was a chilling revelation, one that sent shivers down my spine. I felt a sudden, overwhelming compulsion to confront this malevolent force, to break the cycle that had plagued my family for generations. With newfound determination, I delved deeper into the manuscripts, seeking a way to banish the darkness that had taken root in Blackwood Manor. As I deciphered the ancient texts, I uncovered a ritual that promised to sever the connection between my family and the malevolent presence. It was a perilous undertaking, but I knew I had no other choice. The whispers from the shadows grew louder and more desperate, as if sensing my intent. With trembling hands, I gathered the necessary ingredients and prepared for the ritual. The room seemed to come alive with a sinister energy, as though the very walls were resisting my efforts. But I pressed on, fueled by a determination to free my family from the curse that had haunted us for centuries. As I completed the ritual, a deafening silence descended upon the room, and the shadows seemed to retreat. I could no longer hear the whispers, and a sense of peace settled over the mansion. The curse had been broken, and I had finally put an end to the malevolent force that had plagued my family for generations. Story 2. My name is Samuel Thornton, and I'm a historian with a penchant for exploring the past. It was the year 1887 when I found myself drawn to a place known as Hollow Hill. Nestled deep within the English countryside, this forsaken place held a dark and ominous reputation that had endured for centuries. The story of Hollow Hill had been whispered among locals for generations, a tale of cursed land and vengeful spirits. As I rode my horse through the thick mist that shrouded the hill, I couldn't help but feel a chill run down my spine. The trees loomed like skeletal fingers, their branches clawing at the sky, as if they, too, were trapped in this accursed place. Hollow Hill was home to an old, dilapidated manor, once belonging to the prominent Holloway family. Legend had it that their ancestral pact with dark forces had led to their downfall, and the manor had been abandoned for decades. My quest was to uncover the truth behind the tales that had haunted the locals. The manor itself was a testament to the ravages of time. Ivy-covered walls crumbled, and shattered windows gaped like empty eye sockets. The air was thick with an oppressive silence as I ventured inside, my lantern casting eerie shadows on the decaying wallpaper. The moment I set foot in the manor, an icy hand seemed to grip my heart. Whispers filled the air, faint at first but growing stronger with each step I took. They spoke of secrets long buried, of tragedies that had unfolded within these very walls. I couldn't help but shudder as the voices swirled around me. As I explored the manor, I came across an old library, its shelves lined with ancient tomes and dusty manuscripts. One book, in particular, caught my eye, a leather-bound journal that belonged to Amelia Holloway, a member of the ill-fated family. The journal contained cryptic entries detailing strange occurrences and visions that plagued the Holloways for generations. Amelia's words spoke of spectral apparitions that roamed the halls, their mournful cries echoing through the night. She described feeling an otherworldly presence, an entity that watched and waited. It was clear that whatever had befallen the Holloway family was far from ordinary. As I delved deeper into Amelia's journal, I couldn't help but feel a growing unease. The more I read, the more I felt as though I were being watched. It was as if the very walls of the manor had eyes, and they were fixed on me with a malevolent intent. The journal entries became increasingly erratic, filled with desperate pleas for salvation. Amelia wrote of a ritual, a desperate attempt to break the curse that had plagued her family for generations. She spoke of an ancient oak tree that stood at the heart of Hollow Hill, its roots intertwined with the darkness that had consumed the land. Driven by a mixture of curiosity and dread, I decided to seek out the oak tree. The night was moonless and starless, a cloak of darkness that seemed to swallow everything in its path. The forest was eerily silent, and the only sound was the crunch of leaves beneath my boots. As I approached the ancient oak, a sense of dread washed over me. The whispers had grown louder, more insistent, and I could feel a malevolent presence closing in. I began the ritual, following Amelia's instructions as best as I could, but the air grew thick with an unnatural coldness, and the shadows around me seemed to come alive. Just as I completed the ritual, a deafening scream filled the night, and the ground beneath the oak trembled. The spectral apparitions that had haunted the manor now materialized before me, their mournful cries echoing through the darkness. They reached out with ethereal hands, their eyes filled with a profound sorrow. I realized that the curse of Hollow Hill was far from broken. Instead, I had unwittingly unleashed the vengeful spirits that had been bound to this place. As they closed in around me, their cold, bony fingers touched my skin, and I felt a searing pain in my chest. In that moment, I understood the true horror of Hollow Hill. The darkness that had consumed the Holloway family now sought to claim me, and there was no escape. As the spirits dragged me into the shadows, I knew that my fate was sealed, and I would become yet another name in the tragic history of this accursed place. But as I looked around the room, I couldn't help but wonder if the darkness had truly been banished or merely contained. The whispers from the shadows had left an indelible mark on my soul, a haunting reminder of the price I had paid to free my family from its ancient curse. Story 3. My name is Eleanor Sinclair, and I'm a historian specializing in the occult. In the year 1845, I found myself on an unsettling journey that led me to a remote village in the English countryside, a place with a dark secret that had been buried for centuries. The village of Ravenswood had always been shrouded in mystery, its name whispered with a sense of unease in the region. The locals spoke of a cursed mirror hidden away in a decrepit mansion, said to hold the vengeful souls of those who dared to peer into its depths. It was a story passed down through generations, and it was this tale that drew me to Ravenswood. Upon my arrival, I was met with a chilling reception from the villagers. They warned me not to seek the mirror, but my curiosity could not be deterred. The mansion, known as Blackthorn Manor, loomed atop a hill, its windows shattered, and ivy creeping up its walls like malevolent fingers. As I entered the dilapidated mansion, I was struck by the overwhelming sense of foreboding that permeated the air. Dust motes danced in the feeble light that streamed through the cracked windows. Cobwebs clung to every corner, and the floorboards creaked beneath my every step. I found the mirror in a forgotten chamber on the upper floor. It stood in stark contrast to the rest of the room, its ornate frame gleaming despite the neglect that surrounded it. The mirror's glass was unblemished, and I couldn't resist the urge to gaze upon my own reflection. As I looked into the mirror, I was met with a sight that sent shivers down my spine. My own reflection seemed to distort and contort, morphing into a grotesque, shadowy figure. Its eyes glowed with malevolence, and I could feel its hatred seeping into my very soul. I stumbled back in horror, but the mirror held me captive. My reflection reached out, its icy fingers brushing against my own. The room grew colder, and I could see my breath misting in the air. The mirror's surface rippled like dark water, and a voice whispered in the depths of my mind, promising revenge. The mirror's revenge, it seemed, was not confined to its own frame. It sought to exact vengeance on the living, and I had unwittingly become its target. I tried to tear myself away from its grasp, but my reflection refused to release me. Days turned into nights, and I became a prisoner in the mansion, unable to escape the mirror's malevolent influence. My reflection haunted my every move, its presence driving me to the brink of madness. I could feel it growing stronger, feeding on my fear and despair. I began to research the history of Blackthorn Manor, hoping to uncover the secrets of the cursed mirror. The mansion had once belonged to the Delacroix family, a wealthy and enigmatic clan with a penchant for the occult. It was rumored that they had used the mirror in dark rituals, invoking the spirits that now sought revenge. As I delved deeper into the history of the Delacroix family, I discovered a name that sent chills down my spine: Isabelle Delacroix. She had been a powerful witch, said to have harnessed the mirror's dark energies for her own gain. It was her spirit that now tormented me, her thirst for revenge insatiable. Desperate to break free from the mirror's grasp, I scoured the mansion for a way to banish the vengeful spirit. My research led me to a hidden chamber deep within the manor, a room filled with ancient tomes and arcane artifacts. Among them, I found a ritual that promised to bind the mirror's power and imprison Isabelle's spirit once and for all. With trembling hands, I gathered the necessary ingredients and began the ritual. The mirror's malevolent presence grew stronger, its reflections twisting and contorting with rage. But I pressed on, determined to put an end to the curse that had ensnared me. As I completed the ritual, a blinding light emanated from the mirror, and Isabelle's spectral form emerged, writhing and screaming in agony. The room trembled, and the mansion itself seemed to protest the banishment of its malevolent occupant. But as the light subsided, I knew that the mirror's revenge had been thwarted. Isabelle's spirit was imprisoned within the mirror once more, her vengeful cries silenced. I had won, but the toll on my own soul was immeasurable. As I left Ravenswood and the cursed mirror behind, I couldn't help but wonder if the mirror's malevolence had truly been vanquished or merely contained. The villagers continued to speak of its dark legend, and I knew that the mirror's curse would forever haunt my nightmares. The mirror's revenge had been thwarted, but its legacy would live on, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked within the reflections of our own souls.